Hi everyone, I'm doing a video which details the precise movement sections of step count for Disk 1 on PC and PS4, specifically Pre-emptive Apps, Pre-emptive Jenova-BIRTH and the Stinger skip. We'll also take a look at which random encounters can be skipped and how they're done. Just a quick note that this is specifically for PC and PS4. The setups are different on the original PlayStation version. Okay, so to start off with, we'll do Pre-emptive Apps setup. It begins shortly after Guard Scorpion. We'll start playing the video now because it doesn't start here, but essentially you want to have your step count in a fairly good position. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you want your movement to be fairly clean, not taking any wrong turns. So if you're having any trouble with navigating these screens, you can take a quick look as to how to do them. Okay, so I think I'll just pause it here. This is just after this ladder, and after the next jump is where we will begin setting up apps. Okay, so I've just slowed it down slightly to make it a little bit easier to watch. Immediately after this jump, you'll want to have Cloud walk up and down. Now, I accidentally used the keyboard instead of the controller when I was recording this, but you just want to alternate between up and down in this specific spot until you force an encounter. Okay, so I've slowed down the video slightly for this section. So once you escape from this battle, you just need to hold left, walking, not running. So it's just left until you walk off this screen. And then it's run right until you stop. I might actually slow this down a little bit more. And then hold down L1, then hold up. Make sure you hold down L1 first. Okay, so this section is a little bit more complicated. We'll just wind it back a little bit. Now, once you stop, once you collide with the wall and Cloud stops moving, you want to then hold down run and then also add left to your direction. So you're holding up and left at the same time. So you'll be holding down L1 and up when you stop, and then hold down run and then go to up left. And then you continue, you'll start to run in this direction. And then when you reach this apex of the corner, you want to switch from up left to up right, like so. And then you just hold that until you run into the elevator. And I go up the elevator, and then we'll be running left for this screen and the next until we stop in a specific spot. Now there is no actual wall. Jesse doesn't stop your movement here, so you do need to get this right. But you want to navigate yourself into this position here. The way I remember it is that Cloud is almost completely blocking the edge of the yellow and black striped panel behind him here. This is how I know it. It's okay if you walk an extra frame to the left. I've found that Pre-emptive Apps still does work, but this is the position that you should aim for. If you walk an extra frame, you can still get the preemptive fight with apps. Now, you talk with Jesse in that position and then just run down. And talk to Biggs, obviously. Now, for this section, you'll start off by running down, and then you'll transition to down left as soon as you go through the door. And a good idea to start off with is to aim to get as close to the wall as possible, obviously without colliding with the edge of the doorway, and then that way you will stop on this pillar. And when you stop on this pillar, just tap L1 and Cloud will push himself around so that you take the exact amount of steps that you need to for this setup. So there you go, tap L1, and that's it for the first reactor. There is a second part to the skip, which is immediately after wall market. This assumes that you're doing guard skip, obviously. If you're not doing guard skip, I don't know what the setup is, but essentially there are no screens which step count is active until immediately before apps in the sewers. Okay, so at the end of this cutscene, after you get dropped by Corneo, you'll be placed onto the next screen just before you fight apps. So we'll go through what the movement is just before that fight. So this cutscene ends, and then immediately hold run down and right. I might just slow this down again. Okay, talk to Tifa. And then whilst you talk to Tifa, you can hold up left and mash at the same time. That's the most efficient way to do this section. And then the next bit is a little trickier, although it's not that hard, but you just need to know the fine details of it. So once you collide from running up left, just let go of up and you'll be going left. And then the next section, you need to walk about a quarter of a step and then hold down run. So essentially you're just going to be pushing run and X fairly close together. So it'd be run X like so. So I'll do it a couple of times in slow motion, then I'll do it again at full speed just to show you exactly what it looks like. Okay, so show that again. And now we'll do it at full speed. And once more. And then the fight with apps starts, and if you've done everything right, it should be a preemptive. Like so. And in case you didn't know, for the fight, it's 3 grenades to start off with, and then Cloud immediately does Braver after he throws his grenade. Okay, so up next is the preemptive setup for Jenova Life. This first screen, it doesn't actually matter. After you set your party, there's no step count on this screen, but on the next screen is where we start. So we'll just kick off with that now. Okay. So on this next screen, there's actually 2 options that you can do to start this. You need to force an encounter at the start of this setup. Now you can either do the setup on this screen as I do it here, or you can actually also do it in the Mithril Caves just before you leave. So right before the screen transition on the last screen of Mithril Caves, you can also force an encounter there, and you can skip this. It's kind of up to you. I've only recently just transitioned to doing the setup in Mithril Caves because I found I prefer it that way, but it's not really. I think it would theoretically be fast. It would be a little bit faster, I think, to do the setup in Mithril Cave, but in order to start, just starting out, it's probably a little bit better to do it here, just to make things a little more simple. But anyway, we need to force an encounter here, and you do that just by pressing up and down, walking, not running, until you get your encounter. And you need to make sure that when you press down, if you go down too far, the staircase will actually push you to the right. You need to make sure that you don't go too far to the right, otherwise the setup won't work. So you see I got pushed a little bit to the right in the last couple of down presses. You just need to make sure that you stay nice and clean. This is why I actually do prefer setting up in Mithril Cave. It's a little bit easier, I think. Okay, so once you've escaped from the encounter, it's run left to start off with. And you don't need to sit and wait like I have here. I just did that for demonstration purposes. As soon as you get that escape, you can hold run left straight away. And then you want to transition to up left about the point where you pass this barrel here, so that you go straight through the door. And on the next screen, run left, run left, run right, run left, run right, and then walk up. So I'll start that over again. Run left, run right, run left, run right, walk up. And yep, that is the preemptive Jenova. And just in case you're looking to know, it's the same as Apps for the start of the fight. It's 3 grenades and then Cloud does his limit. So next we'll move on to Stinger Skip, which is, in my opinion at least, the hardest of the step count skips to do in this game. Okay, so Stinger Skip, probably one of the hardest skips in this run, at least at the time of this recording. Who knows what we find in the future. Especially with this game. Anyway, if you've managed to get over the hurdle for getting step count through Corel, which is a common hurdle for most people, myself included, once you get through that and you can get step count to Cosmo Canyon, we can skip the stinger fights, which are the giant spiders on the 3rd screen in this dungeon. To start off with, you don't need to worry about super precise movement. Just keep it as efficient as possible so that you don't lose the setup, because you need to get to Bergenhagen's second cutscene without getting an encounter. And I'll still go through this just so you can see the inputs for getting through this nice and clean. It's mostly just hold up for this. Transition to up left. Don't hold up left for the entire time. You want to transition to left for a short period of time, because otherwise you'll get stuck in this location here. Just go left, and then you can go back to up left and then hold up as you get towards the end. So now that we've got to the cutscene, you want to force an encounter by walking left and right. But when you walk left and right, make sure you don't walk too far either side, because if you walk too far to the left, this section of wall can push you horizontally and it changes your step count value, and that will ruin the skip. You will be slightly off, and this is precise movement. There is no room for error with this skip, unfortunately. And the same goes for the right. You don't want to move too far to the right, because the same thing can happen with this wall here where it will push you horizontally. So normally in no slots, this is where you would pick up death sentence. Now I'm using a save file, so I've got a different battle encounter, but it is the same. It is on the same step count value, so the battles are still in the same places, just the actual fights are different. That is something that you can do here. You don't need to install a mod or anything to create save files on individual screens that don't have save files. You can just use a pre-prepared save, as long as that save file was on step count. It'll just be the battle configurations that are different. So once we've done that, you run up. Eventually. There we go. Okay. So once we hit this apex, you need to also hold down L1. And you'll run, and once you've running L1, like this is not super precise. Anywhere from like here to here where Cloud's feet are is fine. And you can take it slow. This isn't a timing thing, it's just a movement thing. It's just a movement based skip, so you can take your time with this. At least until the very next step, unfortunately. But in terms of Cloud's movement, you can take your time. And you want to run to this position, and this is where we're going to have to do an encounter skip. We're going to skip a random encounter. And to do that, you need to navigate yourself into a specific position. I use the hand above Cloud as a visual marker as to whereabouts you get the battle. Now, this is the last position that you can get in before the encounter. And notice for the entire time, you hold down L1 and up for this section. So on the next frame that we move, we are scheduled to get an encounter. However, with this game running at 30 frames per second, if we tap up on the next frame and then triangle on the very frame after, we will actually skip the encounter that we're supposed to get. And I'll get to what you need to do after that, but basically that's what you need to do. You need to press up for one frame, and then on the very next frame you need to open the menu. If it's not the next frame, you'll still get the battle, and you haven't lost the skip, you've just lost the full skip. There is a backup which I will show you in case you miss the encounter skip, but that's what you need to do. And we'll look into how it looks on the controller. So you see I'm holding run, I'm holding L1, and I will press up and triangle, not at the same time, but very close together. Okay, like so. And this is the position where you are, this is the position where you would get the battle, where you see the right hand side of the hand kind of lines up with this wall here. That's how you know you're in the right position. So now we've skipped the encounter, you need to move one more frame up up whilst running, everything in Stinger Skip is running. So if I just say up, left, down, right, just assume it's running because there is no walking in this skip. So holding L1, you need to also go up for one more frame. You can do the same thing as what you did where you go up and triangle and use the menu to stop you running any further. It's called a menu buffer. And once we've done that, we're in the correct position to actually do the rest of the skip. This is the hardest part by far. If you can get through this, the rest of it is easy as pie. Okay, so I still do the menu buffers. I much prefer it. I don't like trying to press buttons for exactly one frame. It's a pain in the ass. So you see, I actually missed it there. I pushed the two buttons too close together. Pretty sure I get it on the next one. Yep. So that's it there. And you'll be in this position. And once you're in this position, you are in the correct position to do the rest of the skip. So the next step is run down, then run up. And then as you're running up, when you start approaching the web, you need to hold down L1, not until you're right up into the web. Like you want to make sure you don't run to the left in this section here. Not until you need to hold L1 when you're next to this wall. So see, that's where I start holding L1. I basically use the spider web as a cue to press L1 or just before hitting the spider web. So holding down L1 up and X, you also need to open the menu without releasing any of the other buttons. And this is important. Even if you can release all the buttons on the same frame, the skip will still not work. You have to open the menu here. It's to do with the sub-pixel location. I'm not fully knowledgeable on it, but apparently there's some sort of quirk with the sub-pixel location where if you don't open the menu there, you will actually run all the way to the left and kind of just lose your movement. But once you open the menu, then you can release all the buttons and then close the menu and run left. Once you stop, run right. And then release right, hold L1 and then hold up. And then when you stop, release L1. And I pick up the turbo ether here because you need to force an encounter before you fight G, otherwise you will trigger the duplicating boss glitch. It's a glitch where if you skip an encounter before a boss, you actually have to fight the boss twice. It's a bit of a strange one, but then we are skipping battles, which the game isn't designed to do. So I pick up the turbo ether there just because the only time loss is the actual animation of the chest opening and closing the box. And then you'll get a cutscene, the final cutscene with Bugenhagen. That's on step count at least for this dungeon. And then you'll see me, I do like 3 small circles and then run up, and you can basically get to a point where Cloud's feet just don't show up anymore. When you're at that point, just go left, right, left, right, left, right until you get your battle. And I think we can go back to full speed now. There we go. See, I still got a heap of step count to go. And normally this would be a preemptive, but because I used to save, it's a back attack. I actually think it took quite a while to get out of this fart. Good lord. Alright. Me doing an unnecessary cure. And then once you got that battle, that's it. Skips over. And then you go on to fight G, which is hardest fight of the game. You have to make sure you get the elixir on him and not the fire dudes. Okay. Okay, so I'll just cover a quick backup for Stinger Skip in case you missed the first encounter. The first encounter skip, rather. What we'll do is, this is immediately after the fight, after the Bergenhagen cutscene. So as before, run straight up, and I'll just go and trigger the encounter straight away. We get the encounter, and you'll be in this position. Rather than do the menu buffer like you would where you successfully skip the encounter, you want to run straight down. And then up, but not up all the way this time. You want to get to this position coming up. The first position where the hand actually sticks out from this brown roof here. You don't specifically, this is not the only position where it works. If you run an extra frame or two, so if your hand is like up here at the tip of the mouse, or even one frame higher, tip it here, where you run for say 2 frames instead of 1 by accident, all these positions work and they're all the same movement, so it doesn't matter too much. It's not precise, but aim for this position and you should be okay. And when you get to this position, run left and then run up. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to need to force a fight before the next stinger. The reason is you're not going to be able to skip the second stinger as if you normally were when you don't get the encounter skip. So you need to force an encounter just before stinger, escape from it, then fight stinger and kill him, and then force an encounter just before you fight G, and then your step count value will be in the same position. So here I just spam left and right for a bit until I get the fight. There we go. Okay. So once you get that, we fight Stinger, and we can go back up to full speed now. What do I do? Playback. And to fight Stinger, you want to do laser twice. And then after the second laser, 2 Molotovs. So you can get the turbo ether there, and it's on fast speed. Looks like it. And then, as before, you need to force an encounter just before you leave this screen, and you'll be on the same step counts as before, but you will have slightly different, you'll have different actual battles where you get those encounters, because the battle tables are now on a different value. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I would assume that you would only get Stilva once in Guy's Cliff instead of twice, like you do on normal step count. So if you do have to do this backup strat, you only get one Stilva. If you're on the if you're doing Magic Breath route, you will have to wait for that, for him to use Magic Breath. You're gonna have to, because you're not gonna get a second opportunity to do it, I believe. Someone can correct me later if I'm wrong in the comments, and I'll highlight that, but I would imagine that's what the case is. I've never actually gotten a run where I had to use the backup to Guy's Cliff. Dang it. Run from this battle, and then go on to fight Guy.